Dr. Eleanor Reyes rubbed her tired eyes, the blue glow of holographic displays casting strange shadows across her face. 6 months in Europa's underfunded observatory outpost had left her with permanent dark circles and a caffeine dependency that would alarm most medical professionals. But tonight, all that mattered was the anomaly in Sector 57. "Computer, run spectral analysis again," she murmured, her breath fogging in the station's perpetually chilly air. The answer remained the same. A massive object traveling at 0.3s, nearly a third the speed of light, had suddenly begun decelerating within their solar system, impossible by every known law of physics. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she encoded the emergency transmission to Earth. The station's ancient systems barely had enough bandwidth for the data packet, but it was humanity's only warning. Within 12 hours, her lonely vigil transformed into global pandemonium. First came the communications blackout, worldwide systems crashing simultaneously. Then, satellite networks failed, defense grids, power stations, hospitals switching to emergency generators. Cities plunged into darkness. Eleanor watched helplessly from Europa as holographic projections materialized over every major city on Earth, enormous city-sized vessels hovering above New York, Beijing, and London, their surfaces rippling with impossible geometries and pulsing with violet energies. The central projection portrayed a humanoid figure, tall, willowy, with opalescent skin and 6-fingered hands. Despite appearing almost gentle, something about the being's too perfect symmetry and unblinking eyes triggered a primal revulsion. "Humans of Earth," the being addressed in flawless, accentless English. "I am Ambassador Xelfar of the Axioni Collective. Our civilization has traversed the cosmos for 50 millennia. Your species occupies a strategic hyperspace junction our collective requires for galactic transit." Eleanor watched Earth's hastily assembled emergency council, politicians, military leaders, and scientists, gathered in the UN bunker, their faces ashen as the alien continued. "You have 30 standard days to evacuate your population to the Mars colony. We will provide necessary technology for temporary atmospheric enhancement. Compliance will ensure your species' survival. Resistance is..." The transmission suddenly distorted as something streaked across the New York skyline, a sleek experimental fighter jet on a collision course with the alien projection device. "Captain Santos, abort. You are ordered to stand down," came the panicked military transmission. "Like hell," came the pilot's calm reply. "My daughter's on that evacuation list." "Not happening." The jet's experimental quantum resonance engine ignited with blinding intensity just before impact. The explosion engulfed the projection device in blue-white fire. For 3 heartbeats, the massive ship above New York flickered, its perfect surface revealing something beneath the facade, something mechanical and vulnerable, before the projection stabilized. Eleanor's scientific mind processed what everyone else missed in the chaos. When the quantum engine exploded, the alien ship's hull had momentarily destabilized, revealing a distinct energy pattern. Her hands flew across the console, isolating that millisecond of footage and enhancing it frame by frame. There, a resonance cascade in what appeared to be their propulsion system, a weakness no one else would have noticed if not for her specialized research in quantum field harmonics. As global panic erupted and world leaders prepared to capitulate, Dr. Eleanor Reyes downloaded her findings to a secure drive. She had 30 days to find someone crazy enough to help her exploit this vulnerability. She knew exactly where to start. Eleanor's security clearance had been revoked 6 hours after she transmitted her findings to Earth. No explanation, just a curt message from Unified Space Command. "Return to Mars base. Await reassignment." She had no intention of complying. The military transport she'd hijacked skimmed Earth's thermosphere, her hands shaking on unfamiliar controls. Below, evacuation centers had become nightmarish bottlenecks, millions scrambling for limited Mars shuttle slots, governments already abandoning pretense of orderly procedures. Approaching restricted airspace, the autopilot warned. "Naval Special Weapons Facility. Pacific Northwest region. Eleanor disabled the warning and plunged toward the facility hidden among ancient Douglas firs. She'd need to time this perfectly. The facility's automated defenses would activate in approximately 8 seconds. 7, 6, 5. She punched in the access code she'd stolen from USC's database. 4, 3. The transport dropped like a stone, engines screaming. 2, 1. The hangar's camouflaged roof retracted mere seconds before she crashed through. Halt and identify. Armed guards surrounded the smoking transport, weapons trained on the exit ramp. Eleanor stepped out, hands raised. I'm here for Commander Wei. Dr. Reyes. The security chief lowered his weapon slightly. You shouldn't be here. The commander isn't receiving visitors. Where is he? A resigned sigh. The brig. 20 minutes and one forged authorization later, Eleanor stood before a reinforced cell door. The guard's keycard opened it to reveal a dimly lit room and a man sitting motionless on a steel bench. Commander Jackson Wei looked nothing like the decorated officer from their academy days. His regulation haircut had grown out. A jagged scar bisected his left eyebrow, and his eyes, once warm and ambitious, had hardened into obsidian. They said you tried to steal the Prometheus, Eleanor said, closing the door behind her. Wei didn't look up. Not steal. Save. They were going to dismantle her. I need your help. The world's ending, Eleanor. Find someone else. I found a weakness in their technology. This caught his attention. What kind of weakness? Before she could explain, alarms wailed throughout the facility. The overhead lights switched to pulsing red. Perimeter breach. Came a panicked announcement over the intercom. Unknown hostiles. The transmission cut to static. Wei was instantly on his feet. Those aren't regular intruders, Accioni. Eleanor nodded grimly. They must have tracked my transport. The cell door burst open as the security chief staggered in, bleeding from a shoulder wound. We're being overrun. Some kind of infiltration units. Not human. Wei moved with practiced efficiency, relieving the wounded man of his sidearm. We need to reach sub-level 3. The Prometheus? Eleanor asked. My team's there. Your team. Wei's mouth curved into the ghost of a smile. Did you think I was planning to fly that ship solo? They sprinted through chaos-filled corridors, dodging firefights between security forces and sleek, silver humanoid figures whose limbs moved with unnatural fluidity. Wei led them through maintenance shafts and emergency stairwells until they reached a massive blast door. Authorization. Wei Jackson. Command override Helios 7 Delta. The massive doors parted to reveal a cavernous hangar containing a spacecraft unlike any Eleanor had seen, predatory lines of matte black material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Standing at the ship's entry ramp were 4 figures, a rail-thin woman with calloused hands and calculating eyes, a younger woman whose fingers traced equations in the air as if seeing invisible patterns, a tall man with close-cropped hair and a professor's bearing, and a figure in a modified VR rig obscuring their features. The extraction team's early, Wei announced. Change of plans. Who's she? Asked the woman in the VR rig, voice distorted through its speakers. The only person who might know how to save our planet, Wei replied. Now move. We've got about 30 seconds before those things breach the hangar. As if on cue, the blast doors began to glow red-hot as something cut through them from the other side. The Prometheus tore through Earth's atmosphere, its experimental engines howling as Wei pushed them beyond safety parameters. Eleanor clung to her harness, the G-forces threatening to black her out. We've got 3 bogies on our tail, announced the woman in the VR rig, her fingers dancing through holographic displays only she could see. Accioni Hunter-class vessels, closing fast. Wraith, can you jam their targeting? Wei asked, banking the ship hard to starboard. Trotting, Wraith replied, her modified rig pulsing with activity. Their systems are weird, like they're thinking rather than computing. Eleanor didn't have time for proper introductions. The rail-thin woman was Ling Zhang, former lead engineer on the Quantum Propulsion Initiative, before her unsafe innovations got her court-martialed. The young woman tracing equations in the air was Anika Patel, a neurodivergent linguistics savant who processed mathematics as visible colors. The tall man was Dr. Kwame Osai, a quantum physicist whose theories on pan-dimensional mechanics had been dismissed as fringe science. A scarlet beam lanced past the viewport, close enough to make the hull sensors scream. "Executing Venus slingshot," Wei announced, plunging the ship toward the planet's atmosphere. Everyone brace. The Prometheus skimmed Venus's toxic clouds, using the planet's gravity to whip around at impossible speeds. For a moment, Eleanor thought they'd lost their pursuers. Then 5 more hunter ships appeared directly in their flight path. "They knew our trajectory," Wei said grimly. "Someone on Earth is feeding them information." Eleanor's mind raced. The evacuation protocols. They're gathering intelligence during processing. The compliance is a trap. A direct hit rocked the ship, knocking out auxiliary power. As damage control systems engaged, Dr. Osei shouted from his monitoring station. "Commander, their weapons just misfired. 3 simultaneous targeting failures." Another blast nearly struck them, then veered off course at the last second. It happened again. When Dr. Osei stared at Anika, who was rocking back and forth, hands pressed against her temples, clearly distressed by the battle. "When she what?" Wei demanded, executing another evasive maneuver. Before Osei could answer, a hunter ship locked a tractor beam onto the Prometheus. The ship shuddered as the beam began pulling them toward the waiting Axioni vessel. Anika screamed, a sound of pure anguish, and the tractor beam abruptly shattered like glass. The resulting energy backlash disabled 2 hunter ships, creating a temporary escape corridor. Wei didn't waste the opportunity, pushing the engines beyond Red Line toward Europa. In the momentary calm that followed, Eleanor explained her observations from the quantum resonance explosion in New York. "You're saying human brains somehow interfere with their technology?" Ling asked skeptically. "Not all brains," Eleanor replied, studying the neural activity readings she'd taken during the battle. "But Anika's patterns are extraordinary. Her synesthesia creates unique wave functions I've never seen before." Dr. Osei's eyes widened. "The void spectrum." "The what?" Wei asked. "A theoretical energy band where information could travel instantaneously across any distance," Osei explained. "Most dismissed it as impossible. But if the Axioni use it for their ship-to-ship communications, and if human neural patterns naturally create static in that spectrum," Eleanor continued. "Then we've been jamming them without knowing it," Ling finished. "Our technology, our brain patterns, our entire electromagnetic presence." A proximity alarm cut through their revelation. They'd reached Europa, but so had an Axioni dreadnought twice the size of their pursuers. As they prepared for another battle, Wraith's voice cut through the tension. "Incoming transmission from Earth." The view screen flickered to show General Maria Santos, Maya's mother, her face gaunt with exhaustion. "If anyone receives this, the evacuation is a lie. They're not relocating us. They're harvesting us for biological research. And they're accelerating the timeline. We have less than 72 hours before Earth is fully compromised." The transmission ended as abruptly as it began. We turned to Eleanor, his expression stone. "What exactly did you see in their technology?" "A weakness in their propulsion system," she replied. "But now I think it's more than that. I think they're vulnerable to us in ways they never anticipated." Anika, now calm, spoke for the first time since their escape. "They're afraid of our noise," she said, her fingers painting invisible patterns. "Their minds are perfect music. Ours are beautiful chaos." "Anika is the key," Eleanor insisted as the Prometheus's crew gathered in what passed for a briefing room, a cramped compartment with holographic displays covering every surface. Her neurology can disrupt their systems. You want to use her as a weapon? Ling asked, voice sharp with disapproval. I want to understand how her brain patterns affect Axioni technology, so we can replicate it, Eleanor clarified. If we could amplify these effects, weaponize human consciousness, Osai murmured. Theoretically possible, but the power requirements would be insane, Ling finished. We'd need a planetary-scale power source. Wraith removed her VR rig for the first time, revealing a face webbed with delicate circuitry interfaces, neural augmentation hardware, illegal in most jurisdictions. Her real eyes, unchanged amid the technology, were startlingly bright. While you were debating ethics, I infiltrated the Axioni transmission frequencies, she said, projecting a series of decoded images. They're setting up processing centers on the moon's dark side. And these are the processors. The images showed humans, hundreds of them, suspended in crystalline chambers, connected to a vast, pulsing network. They're not killing us, Wei observed grimly. They're using us as computational nodes, Eleanor realized. Human brains networked into their systems. An explosion rocked the ship. The Axioni dreadnought had found them. We've got minutes before they board, Wei said, checking his weapon. Ling, can you modify our comms array to amplify Annika's neural patterns? Possibly, but I need time. Split up, Wei ordered. Eleanor, get Annika to the observatory. Retrieve your research data. Wraith, stay and help Ling. Osai, you're with me. We'll hold them off. As Eleanor led Annika through Europa's observatory corridors, the younger woman suddenly stopped, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. They're broadcasting, she whispered. I can see their signals. Through the viewport, Eleanor watched silver figures emerging from the dreadnought, moving with inhuman grace across Europa's icy surface toward the airlock. We need to hurry, she urged. No, Annika replied calmly. Watch. As the first infiltrators reached the airlock, Annika closed her eyes and began humming, a discordant melody that seemed to shift between audible frequencies. The nearest infiltrator suddenly convulsed, its silver form glitching like corrupted data before collapsing. How? Eleanor began. I can see their frequency, Annika explained. I can change it. A new proximity alert blared through the station. Not infiltrators this time. Something much larger had detached from the dreadnought and was approaching the observatory dome. Through the viewport, Eleanor watched in horror as a massive crystalline structure unfurled like a blooming flower, revealing a being unlike anything she'd imagined. Not the humanoid Axioni ambassador, but something insectoid and immense, its segmented body pulsing with internal light. Where a head should be, thousands of crystalline facets reflected the starlight, creating a mesmerizing mosaic effect. Caretaker, Annika whispered, backing away from the viewport. The real masters. The crystalline facets suddenly glowed, projecting a beam directly through the observatory's shields, as if they didn't exist. The beam struck Annika, who collapsed instantly. Eleanor lunged to catch her, but as their skin made contact, the beam enveloped them both. Pain unlike anything Eleanor had experienced coursed through her consciousness as alien thoughts invaded her mind. Your kind is uniquely probably matic, came a voice that wasn't sound but pure conceptual transfer. Your brain chemistry produces unpredictable void he noise. For the harmony of the quality, you cannot be permitted to evolve if you are TR. Eleanor felt the alien presence dissecting her thoughts, cataloging her memories, analyzing her consciousness with cold precision. It was consuming her from within. In desperation, she focused on her most chaotic memories. The fury when her funding was cut, the grief when her mother died, the confused passion of her relationship with Wei, and thrust them at the invading presence, The caretaker recoiled mentally, its methodical dissection disrupted by the unpredictable emotional assault. Inefficient, it projected, confusion rippling through its thoughts. Disorderity, waste to fuel. That's humanity for you, Eleanor gasped, pressing her advantage by releasing a flood of contradictory emotions: love and hate, hope and despair, fear and courage. Directly at the alien consciousness, the mental connection shattered, leaving Eleanor trembling beside Annika's still form. Through the viewport, she saw the caretaker retreating, its crystalline structure pulsing with erratic patterns. Annika's eyes fluttered open, now ringed with pinpricks of light that hadn't been there before. "They miscalculated," she said, her voice overlaid with harmonic overtones. "They thought we were primitive because we're chaotic. They never realized chaos is our evolutionary advantage." Eleanor helped her up as the observatory's emergency containment systems activated. Beyond the viewport, the stars were disappearing as the Prometheus executed a desperate maneuver, positioning itself between the observatory and the regrouping caretaker vessel. "The data," Annika reminded her. "You came for your research." Eleanor nodded, accessing the observatory's core systems and downloading everything to a portable drive. As the transfer completed, a realization struck her. "We're not just noise in their system," she said slowly. "We're a completely different language, one they've never encountered before." Annika smiled, the lights in her eyes pulsing in rhythm with her words. "And they have no translation protocol." The Prometheus shuddered as another Axioni energy blast struck its shields. Way's voice crackled through Eleanor's comm unit. "We're coming around for extraction." 60 seconds. Eleanor supported Annika through Europa Station's twisting corridors toward the emergency airlock. The younger woman moved with increasing difficulty, her body temperature dropping as the alien presence lingered in her neural pathways. "They're scanning everything," Annika whispered, her breath visible in the frigid air. "All human knowledge, all our art, our music. They're trying to understand us through data." "And?" Eleanor asked, punching in the airlock sequence. "They think we're inefficient, wasteful." A small smile crossed Annika's face. "They can't comprehend why we create art that serves no function, why we value emotional connection over processing efficiency." The airlock cycled open as the Prometheus aligned with the docking ports. Through the viewport, Eleanor could see Axioni hunter ships converging on their position. "We won't make it," she realized. "They'll intercept before the docking completes." Annika straightened, the pinpricks of light in her eyes intensifying. "Yes, we will." She pressed her palms against the viewport, her fingers tracing complex patterns as she hummed that discordant melody again. Only now, Eleanor could almost see the sound waves propagating through space, disrupting the perfect formation of the approaching hunters. Two collided in spectacular fashion. Another three veered off course, their navigation systems scrambled. "How are you doing that?" Eleanor asked as they rushed through the now completed docking tunnel. "I can see the void spectrum now," Annika replied. "It's like colored mathematics." They reached the Prometheus's bridge to find chaos. Osai was bleeding from a head wound. Ling was frantically rerouting power from damaged systems, and Wraith sat unnaturally still, neural interfaces pulsing as she conducted silent cyber warfare against the alien vessels. "We've got the data," Eleanor announced, connecting her drive to the ship's systems. "And we know how they think." "Great," Wei replied, not taking his eyes off the battle unfolding around them. "Now we just need to survive long enough to use it." The main view screen showed a new development. The massive caretaker vessel was powering up what appeared to be a primary weapon system. Gravitational distortion cannon, OC identified, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his pain. "If that hits us." "It won't," Ling interrupted, completing her modifications. "Because we're about to try something incredibly stupid." She'd converted the ship's communication array into a crude amplifier for Annika's neural patterns, connected directly to the Prometheus's power core. This will probably kill her, Ling mourned. It definitely will, Annika corrected calmly. But it might save billions. Before anyone could object, she connected herself to the modified array. Her body arched as the ship's energy coursed through her nervous system, her eyes blazing with internal light. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. For the Axioni, throughout their fleet, systems failed simultaneously. Hunter ships drifted powerless. The dreadnought's weapon charge dissipated in crackling arcs of energy. On the Prometheus's bridge, alarms blared as power fluctuations threatened critical systems. "She's channeling too much energy," Ling shouted over the noise. "The converter can't handle it." "Disconnect her," Eleanor ordered. "I can't," Ling replied. "She's locked the system." Y made a split-second decision. "Full power to engines. Get us clear before she overloads." As the Prometheus accelerated away from the disabled Axioni fleet, Eleanor watched in horror as Annika's physical form began to shimmer, her outline becoming indistinct as the energy coursing through her increased beyond containment. "Eleanor," Annika called, her voice overlaid with harmonic frequencies. "I can see them all. Every human they've captured. They're still alive in the network." The ship's view screen flickered, showing impossible images. The lunar processing facility where thousands of humans hung suspended in crystalline chambers, their minds linked to the vast Axioni consciousness network. "They're not dead," Annika continued, her body now barely visible beneath the energy coursing through her. "Just assimilated. I can reach them." "Don't," Eleanor pleaded, understanding Annika's intention. "There has to be another way." Annika smiled as her physical form began to disintegrate. "There isn't, but this isn't an ending." Her body collapsed into pure energy, a blinding flare that momentarily overloaded the ship's sensors. When the systems recovered, Annika was gone. But the comms array continued to pulse with activity. "Where is she?" we demanded. Osei studied the readings with wide eyes. "She's everywhere. She's converted her consciousness into pure void spectrum energy." Through the view screen, they watched as a wave of disruption spread outward from the Prometheus, engulfing the Axioni fleet before continuing toward the moon. Wherever it touched, alien systems failed catastrophically. "She's freeing the others," Eleanor realized, using the Axioni's own network against them. Wraith suddenly gasped, her neural interfaces flaring with activity. "I'm getting thousands of human consciousness signatures broadcasting through the void spectrum. They're breaking free of the network." The victory was short-lived. As the wave reached Earth, a massive surge of counter-energy erupted from the planet's surface, the caretaker's central consciousness hub responding to the attack. The energy collision created a shockwave that rippled through the void spectrum itself. On the bridge, everyone except Eleanor collapsed instantly, their neural systems overwhelmed. Eleanor remained standing, but felt something tearing at the edges of her consciousness. Annika, reaching out through the chaos. "Find me," came the thought, not in words but in pure conceptual transfer. "I'm skiheteridi akuros de void. Only you can rebuild me." As the message faded, Eleanor collapsed beside her unconscious crewmates, her mind fractured by the connection, but filled with a desperate certainty. Annika still existed, distributed across the void spectrum itself, and somehow, Eleanor would have to find a way to reassemble her consciousness before the caretakers eliminated humanity completely. Eleanor woke to the taste of copper and the soft beeping of medical equipment. The Prometheus's med-bay ceiling swam into focus as her fractured consciousness pieced itself together. 46 hours, came Wei's voice from somewhere to her left. "You were catatonic for 46 hours. She turned to find him looking worse than she'd ever seen him, haggard, unshaven, with a healing gash across his cheek. "The others," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "Recovering." Wraith's neural interfaces were fried. "She's blind without them. Osei's working on replacements. Ling's fine, physically at least." Eleanor struggled to sit up. "And Earth? Wei's expression darkened. The caretakers have accelerated their timeline. Major cities are already being converted into processing hubs. The lunar facility is operating at full capacity. Annika. We detected fragments of her consciousness pattern scattered through the void spectrum, just as she said. But we can't reach her without direct access to their network. Eleanor closed her eyes, remembering Annika's desperate message. We need to board the mothership. Wei didn't argue. I had the same thought. Wraith managed to intercept their command protocols before her systems failed. We have a narrow window where we might slip through their defenses while they're focused on Earth. It's suicide, Ling stated flatly, entering the medbay with a datapad. But since we're all going to die anyway, timing makes little difference. They gathered on the bridge as Wraith, her eyes now covered with crude replacement interfaces cobbled together by OC, outlined their approach. The mothership maintains a quantum connection to all processing hubs, she explained, her voice mechanical through the jury-rigged system. It's their version of a backup server. If Annika's consciousness exists anywhere in retrievable form, it's there. And the gravitational weapon? Eleanor asked. Fully charged, Ose confirmed grimly. Our estimates give Earth less than 12 hours before they trigger a cascade failure in the planet's core. The plan was simple, desperate, and likely fatal. Using data stolen during the Europa encounter, they would disguise the Prometheus as a returning scout ship. Once aboard, they would split into two teams. Wei and Ling would sabotage the gravitational weapon, while Eleanor, Wraith, and Osai would infiltrate the consciousness repository, what Wraith had termed the Crystal Forest, to search for Annika's fragments. The Prometheus slipped through the Accioni defense perimeter with surprising ease. Too easy, Eleanor thought. But they had no choice but to proceed. Inside the mothership, the architecture defied human aesthetics. Corridors that branched fractally, chambers that seemed larger inside than physically possible, surfaces that rippled with internal light responding to their presence. Maintenance shaft, Ling identified, pointing to what appeared to be a pulsing membrane rather than a doorway. This is where we part ways. Wei caught Eleanor's arm as the teams prepared to separate. When this is over. I know, she replied, placing her hand over his. They didn't say goodbye. The Crystal Forest was aptly named, a vast chamber filled with crystalline structures that housed countless consciousness patterns, each crystal pulsing with unique rhythms of light. Walking among them, Eleanor felt the weight of genocide. How many civilizations had the caretakers processed this way? These aren't just storage units, Osai whispered, scanning the nearest cluster. They're intact minds, kept in suspended animation. Can you locate human patterns? Eleanor asked. Wraith adjusted her crude interfaces. Thousands, recently added. This way. They moved deeper into the forest until they reached a section where the crystals pulsed with familiar rhythms, human brainwave patterns. At the center stood a larger formation that glittered with chaotic, fragmented light. That's her, Eleanor breathed. Or what's left of her. Osai prepared the neural interface they'd constructed, a modified version of Wraith's technology designed to connect Eleanor's consciousness directly to the crystal network. Once you're connected, he explained, you'll need to find her scattered fragments quickly. We don't know what defenses they have in place. Eleanor lay beneath the fractured crystal, feeling the interface cold against her temples. How will I know which pieces are hers? You won't, Wraith replied simply. But she might recognize you. The connection felt like plunging into freezing water. Eleanor's consciousness expanded beyond her body, into a realm of pure information. Countless minds brushed against hers, human and alien, ancient and recent, a cosmic library of captured consciousness. Eleanor. The voice, not sound but pure concept, resonated through the network. Not Annika's voice, but something far older and more terrible. The Aneloi. The DEFECT. The one who resists or DR. Eleanor turned within the virtual space to face the presence, the sovereign caretaker, its consciousness, a vast crystalline labyrinth encompassing the entire network. UCEKTHFRHMENT1, it continued. Why? She is inefficient, disorderly, like all your kind. That disorder is precisely why we'll survive, Eleanor replied, projecting her thoughts into the network. You can't predict us because we don't follow your patterns. The Sovereign's attention felt like being scrutinized by an entire civilization, cold, analytical, and utterly inhuman. We created your kind, it revealed, unfurling memories older than human civilization. We created countless worlds, with variantes of your genetacode, seeking weapons against the interoby. That 3 teens US. Images flooded Eleanor's consciousness. Vast machines seeding primordial Earth with engineered genetic material, periodic checks on human development, disappointment at our inefficient evolution, the decision to abandon the experiment. You were me int TUGNE or AT controlled chaos. Predictable human POREDICT ability to shield us from DA harvesters. Instead, UBCAM to RULY random, to ULY free. AFA LED experiment. Eleanor absorbed this revelation, understanding dawning. You're afraid of us because we became what you couldn't, truly creative, truly alive. The Sovereign's response was to dissect her consciousness, painfully extracting memories, emotions, thoughts. Eleanor felt herself fragmenting like Annika, pieces of her mind scattered across the network. In her final moments of coherent thought, she broadcast a single memory throughout the entire system. Not a strategic calculation or brilliant plan, but the simple moment she'd fallen in love with years ago. The spontaneous joy, the irrational hope, the beautiful uncertainty of human connection. Throughout the crystal forest, the human consciousness patterns resonated in response, recognizing the emotional signature that defined their species. The network shuddered as billions of chaotic human thought patterns synchronized momentarily around a single shared experience: love, the most irrational and powerful human emotion. In that moment of harmonic chaos, Eleanor felt Annika's scattered consciousness reach for hers across the network. IFFO and you came the familiar thought pattern. And no, IV found all of us. The crystal forest erupted with light as human consciousness patterns resonated in cascading waves. In the physical world, Osai watched in astonishment as Eleanor's body arched beneath the neural interface, her vital signs spiking beyond safe parameters. She's going into neural shock, he warned Wraith. We need to disconnect her. Wait, Wraith interrupted, her crude interfaces pulsing with activity. Something's happening network-wide. The human patterns, they're synchronizing. Inside the network, Eleanor floated in a sea of fragmented consciousness. Annika's presence enveloped her, no longer a singular entity, but a collective of scattered fragments gradually reforming. We are not just individual minds now, Annika's thoughts explained. We are BCOMMOing, a human network. The sovereign caretaker's presence withdrew momentarily, confounded by the unpredictable harmonization of human thought patterns. Eleanor seized the opportunity, using Annika's dispersed awareness to navigate the vast consciousness repository. Here, Annika guided her toward a secured partition in the network. The weapon control NEXUS. Eleanor's consciousness brushed against the partition, feeling the complex encryption that protected it. Without Wraith's hacking expertise, they couldn't breach it from inside the network. I have a different idea. Annika's thoughts continued. Look at how the EHGDRAVTKIONL weapon functions. Eleanor accessed the weapon schematics through Annika's expanded awareness. The device operated by manipulating what humans called dark energy, the mysterious force accelerating the universe's expansion. The caretakers had harnessed this energy to create localized spatial distortions that could tear planets apart from within. But it works both ways, Annika realized. If REVERCD, HCUREAT is a shield instead of a weapon. Elsewhere in the mothership, Wei and Ling fought through waves of Axioni defenders. Unlike the silver infiltrators they'd encountered on Earth, these were clearly the true Axioni, elegant, almost translucent beings with elongated limbs and eyes that shimmered with internal light. "They're not trying to kill us," Ling observed as they ducked behind a pulsing barrier. "They're hurting us." We nodded grimly, away from the weapon control chamber. They changed tactics, allowing themselves to be driven down a specific corridor before Wei deployed OC's experimental phase shifter, a device that momentarily displaced them into an adjacent dimensional frequency, making them invisible to Axioni sensors. The maneuver worked. They slipped past the defenders and reached the weapon control chamber, a vast spherical room dominated by a crystalline core floating in a containment field. Energy arcs connected the core to the ship's power systems, feeding the weapon as it prepared to fire on Earth. "Can you disable it?" Wei asked, covering the entrance while Ling examined the controls. "Not exactly," she replied, her fingers dancing across the alien interface. "But I think I can redirect it." Back in the Crystal Forest, Eleanor communicated their discovery to OC and Wraith. "We can reverse the gravitational weapon," OC realized, studying the data flowing through Eleanor's neural interface. "Instead of creating a destructive spatial distortion, we could generate a defensive barrier around Earth." "Against what?" Wraith asked. "The Harvesters," Eleanor's physical body whispered, her first words since connecting to the network. "They're coming." That's why the caretakers accelerated their timeline. Inside the network, Eleanor witnessed the caretakers' memories of previous encounters with the Harvesters, vast geometric entities that consumed civilizations whole, converting all matter and consciousness into ordered, homogeneous patterns. They were the ultimate expression of the perfect order the caretakers sought, yet paradoxically, their greatest fear. "We were sure to fight them," Annika's consciousness explained as she assimilated the caretaker knowledge. "Our kaot patiornans dis rubiti their perfectis synemetry." Eleanor understood now. The caretakers tried to process humanity to remove our chaotic nature, but that's precisely what they need to survive. A violent tremor shook the mothership as thousands of human consciousness patterns suddenly broke free of their crystalline prisons, flooding the Axioni network with chaotic, emotional thought patterns. "The Silverigian as RESPONDing," Annika warned. "It's shutting down the network." In the weapon control chamber, alarms blared as Ling worked frantically to reconfigure the gravitational device. "Something's happening to their network," she told Wei. "Their systems are going haywire." Wei's comm unit crackled with OC's voice. "The human consciousness patterns are breaking free. The caretakers are losing control of their entire system." "Can you still redirect the weapon?" Wei asked Ling. "I think so, but..." She gestured at the readouts. "Look at these coordinates. The weapon wasn't targeting Earth. It was targeting something at the edge of our solar system." The view screen showed a magnified image of deep space near Pluto's orbit. Something massive was emerging from what appeared to be a spatial rift, geometrically perfect structures that absorbed light rather than reflected it. "The Harvesters," Wei whispered. In the Crystal Forest, Eleanor felt the Sovereign's presence return with overwhelming force. The crystalline structures throughout the chamber began to fracture as the caretaker attempted to purge the human consciousness patterns from its network. "You cannot resist perfect order," the Sovereign projected. "Your kaotiki, he existnc is he impure, inefficient, all-time, tlifutil." Eleanor gathered her remaining mental strength, reaching out to the scattered fragments of Annika's consciousness and the thousands of human minds now awakening throughout the network. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but chaos creates, order merely maintains, and right now, you need creators, not maintainers. She shared a vision across the network, the reverse-engineered gravitational weapon, creating not destruction, but a shield of chaotic energy around Earth, its pattern constantly shifting in ways the perfectly ordered harvesters couldn't predict or penetrate. The Sovereign paused, its vast consciousness calculating probabilities with inhuman speed. The probability of SUCCESS is minimal, it concluded. That's the difference between us, Eleanor replied. You need certainty. We thrive on possibility. The Sovereign's response came not in concepts, but in action. The crystalline prisons throughout the forest began to dissolve, releasing the captured human consciousnesses. A temporary alliance, the Sovereign projected. If you fail, all Kionets as any is in this CCC2R will be absorbed. In the weapon control chamber, Ling's console suddenly lit up with new command protocols. They're giving us control, she told Wei in disbelief. Full access to the weapon systems. Wei didn't question their fortune. Redirect it. Now. As Ling initiated the reconfiguration sequence, Eleanor felt Annika's consciousness begin to withdraw from the network. I see and maintain. It is distributed form. Muchich longer, she explained. The network is breaking down. Come back with me, Eleanor pleaded. I can't re2R into a physical form, Annika replied. But I can do one last thing. Her consciousness expanded outward, touching every awakened human mind in the network, uniting them in a final, synchronized thought pattern that rippled through the Axioni systems like a tsunami of chaotic creativity. The mothership shuddered as its systems reconfigured according to human intuition rather than caretaker logic. Throughout the vessel, Axioni defenders stood motionless, their connection to the central consciousness temporarily overwhelmed by the human thought wave. In the weapon control chamber, the crystalline core's energy signature shifted from violent red to a pulsing, iridescent blue as the gravitational device reversed its function. It's working. Ling breathed as the view screen showed a massive energy field beginning to form around Earth. Not a rigid shield, but a constantly shifting barrier of chaotic spatial distortions. In the crystal forest, Eleanor felt a final caress from Annika's consciousness before the neural interface went dark. Tell them, came the fading thought. Tell them, we gor me anti for this. Eleanor's body collapsed as OC disconnected the interface. The crystal forest had gone dark. The consciousness patterns evacuated or dispersed. Only a single crystal still pulsed with internal light. The fragmented remains of what had once been Annika Patel. We need to get out of here, Wraith urged as the mothership systems began to stabilize. The caretakers are regaining control. Not control, Eleanor corrected weakly as Osei helped her to her feet. Cooperation. Throughout the ship, the Axioni were awakening, their movements no longer rigidly perfect but slightly more human. The Prometheus limped through space, its systems barely functional after the chaotic reconfiguration. Eleanor, Wei, and the surviving crew gathered on the bridge, watching as Earth shimmered beneath its new protective field, a constantly shifting barrier of spatial distortions that resembled a cosmic aurora. Will it hold? Wei asked, his hand resting lightly on Eleanor's shoulder. Not indefinitely, she replied, studying the readouts from Ling's modified sensors. The Harvester's computational capabilities are beyond comprehension. They'll eventually calculate a way through any fixed pattern. Which is why it's not a fixed pattern, Ling explained, gesturing to the shield's ever-changing configurations. The gravitational field is being modulated by human brainwave patterns from the thousands who were connected to the network. It's literally powered by human unpredictability. Osei looked up from his console, his expression grave. The Harvesters have reached Neptune's orbit. At their current velocity, they'll engage the shield in less than 6 hours. Eleanor felt a strange resonance at the edge of her consciousness, an echo of her connection to the Accioni network. Through that tenuous link, she sensed the caretakers' growing panic as their perfect calculations failed to predict the harvester's approach vector. "They still don't understand," she murmured. "Even now, they're trying to apply logical patterns to an inherently chaotic threat." The bridge view screen flickered, resolving into the translucent form of an Accioni, not an infiltrator or warrior, but one of their scientists, its features subtly altered from their previous encounters. More human. "Dr. Reyes," it addressed her, its voice a harmonic blend of tones. "The Sovereign requests your presence on the command deck." We stepped forward protectively. "Out of the question. We've done our part." The Accioni tilted its head in a remarkably human gesture of consideration. "The shield will fail without further modification. The Harvester Vanguard has already adapted to its initial configuration." Eleanor made the decision without hesitation. "Take us to the mothership." The Accioni command deck was transformed. Where rigid, crystalline structures had dominated before, the architecture now flowed with organic curves. The Sovereign caretaker awaited them. Still immense and inhuman, but its crystalline facets now pulsed with shifting colors that reminded Eleanor of Annika's descriptions of seeing mathematics. "We have miscalculated," the Sovereign acknowledged without preamble, its thoughts resonating directly in their minds. "Our perfect order is insufficient against perfect entropy." "The harvesters aren't entropy," Eleanor corrected, understanding flowing through her lingering connection to the network. "They're hyper-order, so perfectly ordered that they consume all other patterns, reducing everything to mathematical simplicity." "The DSTANCTION is RELEVANT," the Sovereign replied. "They will bury a siege, the shield in 4 hours. 23 minutes. Ling studied the holographic displays showing the approaching harvester fleet, vast geometric structures that absorbed rather than reflected light, their perfect symmetry somehow more terrifying than any organic threat. "We need more power for the shield," she concluded, "and more unpredictability." "The Antarctic facility," we suggested suddenly. "Eleanor, you said the caretakers mentioned seeding Earth with engineered genetic material. What if that facility wasn't built by them, but by us? An earlier version of humanity?" Osi's eyes widened with understanding. "A planetary-scale consciousness amplifier." The Sovereign's crystalline form shimmered with agitation. "Impossible. Human civilization is too young to have such technology. Unless we were more advanced before you abandoned the experiment," Eleanor challenged. "What if you didn't just leave us to evolve naturally? What if you deliberately devolved an already advanced civilization because we became too unpredictable?" The Sovereign's silence was confirmation enough. Within the hour, the Prometheus was racing toward Antarctica, carrying Eleanor, Wei, and Osai, while Ling remained aboard the mothership to coordinate with the Accioni scientists. The Sovereign had provided access to caretaker records that confirmed their theory. Humanity had indeed achieved an advanced, spacefaring civilization nearly 30,000 years earlier, before the caretakers had systematically dismantled our technology and altered our genetics to restart our development under more controlled conditions. The ancient facility lay beneath 3 kilometers of ice, yet remained perfectly preserved. Its architecture blended elements of both human and caretaker design, evidence of a collaboration that had ended in betrayal. "It's a quantum consciousness amplifier," Ose marveled as they activated the facility's central chamber, designed to broadcast human thought patterns across interstellar distances. Not just broadcast, Eleanor realized, studying the ancient control interfaces. Weaponize. The facility had been built as humanity's defense against the harvesters, a way to project our chaotic consciousness as a disruptive force against their perfect order. The caretakers had shut it down when they decided human unpredictability had become too dangerous to control. We need to link it to the shield, we determined, already working with OC to reactivate the ancient systems. Eleanor placed her hand on a neural interface panel, similar to the one she'd used in the Crystal Forest. It needs a primer, a consciousness template to establish the broadcast pattern. It needs you, Wei said quietly, understanding what she was proposing. Because you're still connected to the network. And to Annika, Eleanor added, feeling the faint presence of her friend still resonating at the edges of her mind. The decision was already made. Eleanor connected to the amplifier, feeling her consciousness expand exponentially as the ancient technology awakened. Through her enhanced awareness, she perceived the harvesters with terrifying clarity. Their vast, geometric perfection, consuming everything in their path, reducing complex patterns to simple equations. The shield around Earth faltered as the vanguard vessels engaged it, their perfect calculations systematically dismantling the chaotic barrier. They would breach it within minutes. Eleanor reached deeper into the amplifier, touching the distributed consciousness that had once been Annika. "I'm here," came the familiar presence. "IV began waiting." Together, their joined consciousness flowed through the ancient machine, amplified 1,000-fold as it reached outward to touch every human mind on Earth. Not controlling, connecting. For a brief, transcendent moment, humanity experienced itself as a single entity, united not in perfect harmony but in beautiful, chaotic synchronicity. Through the connection, Eleanor directed the collective human consciousness toward the gravitational shield, infusing it with the full spectrum of human experience: love and hate, hope and despair, creation and destruction. The shield transformed, becoming not just a barrier, but an extension of humanity itself, a projection of our fundamental nature. When the harvesters encountered this new defense, their perfect calculations failed catastrophically. Their geometric structures, designed to process and simplify all patterns, encountered something they could not reduce: the irreducible complexity of human consciousness, constantly shifting, inherently unpredictable, fundamentally creative. The vanguard vessels faltered, their perfect symmetry distorting as they attempted to adapt. Some began to fragment, their structures collapsing under the strain of processing the unprocessable. Others retreated, unable to penetrate the chaotic barrier. In orbit above Earth, the sovereign caretaker watched with its entire species as the supposedly unstoppable harvesters withdrew from the human shield. For millennia, they had sought perfect order as the ultimate defense against cosmic entropy, only to discover that it was chaos, controlled, creative chaos, that could repel perfect order. 3 days later, as the harvester threat receded to the outer edges of the solar system, a formal delegation of caretakers arrived at the Antarctic facility. Eleanor, Wei, and their crew stood as representatives of humanity as the sovereign materialized before them, accompanied by the Accioni High Command. For the first time in its ancient existence, the crystalline being lowered itself in a gesture of deference. "We created as weapons," it acknowledged, its thoughts resonating through the chamber. "Then feared what you might be COM. We failed to recognize that your chaotic nature, your emotions, your contrictions, your capacities, or both destruction and creation, is not a FLAVA, but the highest form of cosmic intelligence. The sovereign's crystalline form pulsed with new patterns, influenced by its exposure to human consciousness through the network. Today, we can humanities supremacy, not dominancy, but supremacy experience. CONCIOU it as in yeses, can HEV way in 8 embraces, rather than FEARS. 3 years later, Eleanor stood on the observation platform of the new United Earth spaceport on Mars, watching the launch of the first joint human caretaker exploration vessel, the Annika Santos. Its hull gleamed with the iridescent technology of the Accioni, modified by human innovation to create something neither civilization could have built alone. Wei approached, now wearing the insignia of the vessel's commander. "Ready?" he asked, his hand finding hers. "Almost," she replied, touching the neural implant at her temple, a permanent connection to what had once been the Accioni network, now transformed into something new. Not a hive mind, but a cooperative consciousness that respected individual thought while enabling shared experience. Through that connection, she felt a familiar presence, not Annika as she had been, but as she had become, a pattern in the network itself, exploring the cosmos in ways physical beings could not. "We thought we needed to become more like them to reach the stars," Eleanor told the assembled cadets who would crew humanity's growing fleet. "Instead, they needed to become more like us." Above them, the Annika Santos vanished into FTL, carrying humanity's unique gift to the stars. On Eleanor's palm, a small hologram flickered to life, a message from the consciousness that had once been Annika Patel, now existing as a pattern in what humans had renamed the synthesis network. "There's so much more out there, Eleanor. And they've all been waiting for someone exactly like us." As the message faded, Eleanor felt the echo of countless alien civilizations through the network, some ancient beyond imagining, others younger than humanity, all watching with wonder as the chaotic, creative species from Earth ventured into the cosmos, bringing with them not perfect order or perfect entropy, but the perfect balance between the two. The moment aliens acknowledged mankind's stellar supremacy was not the end of humanity's story. It was only the beginning.